To start counting is a common question that I get from a lot of students. And it completely makes sense. For a lot of us, we look at these charts when we're first starting out and it just looks confusing. It all looks the same. So I want to make this really simple on where you can actually start your counting from. And I'm going to dive into showing you a few different ways as well. So if any of you are drawers out there, I do drawing. And one thing when I was growing up through high school, when I was in art class and everything, on where we draw from, we usually draw our outside shapes first, and then we kind of draw our eyes and work our way in, facial features and things like that. So we usually draw with the outside, the outlines. Though this changed as I kind of grew up, and I started from the inside instead and worked our way out. And so for me, it's I started out looking from my highs and my lows first on trying to figure out where the counts are going into. But then I dive in to the centers. Okay. So for me, and everybody's going to be just slightly different as certain wave structures are going to stand out to us differently. For me, I can see flat corrections really well, or even expanded flats like three wave movements for me just stand out really well. So I like to go in and just split up anything that I see that just stands out as like a clear correction. Okay. And so I noticed that my low is here, and the high, I always stay away from the high typically because, or the low, depending on where your trend is at. But in this case here, like, I don't know if this is completed, how much more there is. I don't know if this is a wave one of a larger degree. I don't know. We know very little about this because we have to project out and kind of foreshadow and see what is this going to be up here. Well, the best you know, exp- explanation to figuring that out is and support is going to be from knowing what this count is back here. And this count is already set. It's done. Whatever this wave is here, it's a wave. It's in there. Same with this one. And it's our job to basically go and confirm and figure it out because it's going to tell us a story leading into this one as to where this count is going to go. If it's going to finish soon, if it's already done, or if it has a lot further to go on. Okay, so for me, I take a look at where my low is at, and then I go in and I separate it out. So I look at where corrections are at. I say, well, that looks like a correction, correction. This looks like a correction, and I do it in comparison to like the time frame that I'm on. So I'm gonna go back to this. Notice the length of the time of the corrections on these movements here. Okay, for the most part, they're all pretty much the same. Okay, so one, two, three. So these are probably because they're about the same size. I'm probably dealing with these as my big pivot movements in my 4 hour time frame. And when I match it up with the RSI next to help me kind of determine that, sure enough, it basically says that, hey, this is a top, this is a top, and this is a top over here. These are the ones that we want to pay attention to, and we need to figure out if what is what. Where's our third waves, and which time frame do they fall into? Okay, so for me, I split it up by corrections first, and then I go in and I dive into it. Once I have these corrections, I basically go in and I start measuring Fibonacci extensions, retracements, and seeing what matches up the best, and then going into the smaller time frames and figuring out those. So once I have an idea of what the larger count is, it's up to the smaller time frames to actually confirm that. And if they can't confirm it and something is broken on it, then I go back out and I let the smaller time frames lead me in to what the accurate count is. This is very helpful when I'm up here trying to project out price and I go into the smaller time frames and it shows me that, hey, this wave structure isn't done yet, or this correction's not done yet. Hey, this was a three wave move right here. So on a 4 hour, it looks impulsive, but on a 15-minute, it could tell us, hey, this is a three wave move. You're probably dealing with an expanded flat. This whole thing is a correction that's not actually a fifth wave. And those are the things that you discover. So, and through a process of elimination, you're going to be able to get a pretty high probability count as to where the market direction is going to be going. So for me, I take into consideration where the low is at, and the price that's completed and already done is the most important to me. I break it up by the corrections, and then I dive into a smaller time frame, and I break the smaller time frame up by corrections, and I figure out that count, and I make sure that the subwaves of each one of these larger time frame waves actually is supportive of its subwave count. Okay, so for right here, I would just dive into the 15-minute next, and I'd say, okay, so here are my corrections, and here are my impulse waves. Let's make sure that they're actually impulse waves, and let's make sure that these are actually corrections. So I look at the structure here. I say, you know what? It looks like three waves. I'm going to measure out the fib retracement on it, measure out the fib extension. I'm going to look at my RSI. I'm going to figure out where the third wave and the fifth waves are inside of these structures here, make sure that it all matches out. And I have five waves and everything. One thing that's going to like stand out is like, hey, look right here. I have a three wave move, it looks like. So I need to go down and I need to actually figure out, is this some sort of an ending diagonal here? Okay, and make sure that that's an accurate count, or is there something different I'm working with? Is this an expanded flat instead and we have an A, B, and a C? Okay, so now I would go in and I would figure that out. So these are the things that stand out to me. I divide it by the corrections. I go in, I use the RSI, I figure out where my bigger waves are at, because my third waves are going to show their subwave count a lot clearer, you guys. So in other words, I can, if we look at this structure on a 4 hour, and I'll leave this as the last note since you guys have an idea of how to actually of where to count from. But when we're looking at this on a 4 hour time frame, I can see, let's see here, let's get a good one. Um, Maybe 4 hours the wrong one for this cycle so far. So let's try a 1 hour. So you can see the three wave cycles very clearly. So look at this here. Like, notice that this wave here, if we count this out as a wave one, two, a three, a four, and a five, let's just call it that way. Okay. So notice that the third wave, because it's the biggest wave, it shows its subwaves a lot easier than wave five and wave one. So notice in comparison, looking at wave one, you can't see any waves in that at all unless you drop down to a smaller time frame. Same with wave five. It almost looks like just one wave. So until you drop down to a smaller time frame, you're not going to know if there's actually five waves in that or not. You're only going to be assuming. But the third wave, it is a lot easier to be able to figure out if it has five waves in it, staying on the same time frame. So and that's because it's your largest wave. And that works for all of these. Take into consider this run up right here. I would highlight that this is like your third wave, and you can just see the wave cycles a lot clearer in it. So, and if you can't, then you're probably dealing with a wave one or a wave five, and you need to drop down to a smaller time frame to be able to confirm that. And that's where that fractal image kind of comes into play. And you got to make sure that you're not getting confused between the two. And it really just comes with practice, you guys. You just put in the work, and it will pay off tenfold for you guys. So that's where I start my counting and how I do it, by breaking up the corrections, diving into the things that look the most obvious, separating out the counts with them, and then seeing how it all fits together. All right, thanks so much for tuning in, you guys. I'll see you for the last bonus video. I hope you enjoy.